I love it, man. I love it. You know, you set this stream up, you do all this shit, you work on all this goddamn technology and all this bullshit, and then, like, it's about to go and then rip. R.I.P. Fuck you, I guess. Fucking bullshit, man. Holy shit. What a fucking joke. Yeah, no, RIP Streamlabs for sure. I'm done with this shit. I'm going back to, I'm actually going to do StreamYard. Fuck this thing, man. I'm done with Streamlabs. Stupid ass, bullshit ass. Fuck that shit. Okay, anyway, let's not start off on the bad foot. It's okay, everybody. It's okay. Hey, chill out. By the way, none of that's going on the podcast. I haven't recorded yet, so none of that's going on the podcast. I can't stand it, though, dude. I can't stand it. Holy shit. Okay, anyway. Stupid ass, bullshit ass program. Fuck this program. Okay. It's all good, man. Hey, it's all good. You know, we're doing our thing over here. No worries. Welcome back to the Den of Nerds. I am Josh, and man, we've got an exciting show for you today. The Wednesday after Daredevil Born Again. You know, we've been anticipating this show for quite some time. It finally dropped. It finally happened. Daredevil Born Again is here, episode 1 and episode 2, and I want to give a breakdown. We're going to go no spoilers here on the stream. I know not everybody has seen it. I definitely have some things to say. I want to talk about the show. I recorded a spoiler review, and I have sent that out to some editors, so that'll probably drop later today. We'll have that going on for you guys as far as the spoiler thoughts, and of course, there's a big thing that happens, and a lot of people want to talk about it. Weird stuff being said by Marvel Studios executives about what it means. So we'll get into that in the video, and potentially we'll talk about that later on this week on streams, but I know not everybody has seen it yet. You know, in my opinion, this might be one of the worst kept secrets in all of Hollywood. But at the same time, it is a secret, and I know some people will be like, dude, don't spoil that for me. So we're not going to spoil it. We'll talk about it in the video. We'll talk about it later in the week. But I still have some things to say about Daredevil Born Again. You know, we had the watch party last night. I thought it was really fun. Thank you to everybody that showed up. It was a good time. And it was fun to experience that together, especially the beginning parts of episode 1. Holy, that was pretty wild. So shout out to everybody. And, you know, we'll also discuss today how I think the show is doing. It's a little too early to tell. We'll get some information. I would imagine we'll get some information from Disney if it's doing really well. And it was trending yesterday. It did trend today as well. So I would say, from what I can tell, the show is getting some views. People are excited about it, but we don't know the full extent of what that is. So we'll get into that. I also have some things that we need to talk about with regards to Doomsday today. A lot of people saying that Doomsday is going to be delayed, and so that's weird. I want to talk about where that report is coming from, and we'll break it down. There is also some comments being made by the Russo brothers about Robert Downey Jr. It tells us a little bit more of the timetable behind the scenes. It's fascinating. There's a new video that I want to react to you guys with today. It's 6 minutes, and it's a little like interview with the Russos as they talk about doing this thing with Doomsday, RDJ convincing them to do it, the timing of all of that. It's really fascinating. So we'll get into that a little bit today. And then we have to talk about the DCU drama. DCU drama. There's stuff about Superman, conflicting reports about how the screenings are doing for Superman. I want to touch on that a little bit. And also, fascinating comments made by Robert Pattinson about Batman. Now, this is a big rumor. This is a story we've been talking about for, 6 to 9 months. And this has to do with who will be the Batman of the DCU. Are they still going to do Robert Pattinson stuff? Is Robert Pattinson Batman going to join up and be the DCU Batman? If not, is the Robert Pattinson Batman stuff Jover? Did you guys hear what Robert Pattinson said on the red carpet for his new movie about being Batman? It's crazy. I believe the quote was, I fucking hope I'm filming that movie soon. I started out as a young Batman, and I'll be fucking old Batman by the time that movie shoots. That is pretty close to what he said, and that is fascinating, guys. That is that's not something you want to hear the main actor that's playing Batman to say. Yeah, here's the quote right here. When asked about returning to the Batman 2, he said, "I fucking hope so. I started out as young Batman. I'm going to be fucking old Batman by the sequels." Yikes! And so we'll get into that. We'll talk about what it could mean and why James Gunn might be failing big time and why he might be pissing everybody off. So lots to get into today. Hope you guys are doing well out there. As far as show notes are concerned for this week, couple of things going on. Tonight at 7:30, we're going to do our members-only stream. We always do that Wednesday evening. It's always the time where we get together with the members. If you're a Nerdventure member here on the YouTube channel or on the Twitch, we will be live tonight at 7:30. It's the first week of the month. I can't believe it's the third month of the year already. This is nuts. But tonight, first week of the month, very casual stream. Just going to be doing Q&A. If you have some questions for me, potentially about maybe some of the leaks, potentially about Daredevil, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, whatever it is, you got some things you want to talk about, come on by tonight at 7:30. We'll go for hour and a half, 2 hours, just kicking it with the community tonight. And I'll just be answering questions and kind of hanging out. So that'll be tonight. And then Friday evening at 7:30, we will do another Diamond Lounge. That happens via our Discord. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you can't afford it. I'll see you guys Friday night at 7:30. Should be a good time. There's a couple of weird things going on in the world right now. So there might be some interesting conversation had Friday evening. And other than that, I've got a lot of videos cooking. I've got a big X-Men video cooking. I've got a big Secret Wars video cooking. I just recorded a spoiler-filled thoughts on Daredevil Born Again video, which should drop later today. So we're cooking over here at the Den of Nerds, and we will continue to do watch parties for Daredevil next Tuesday evening. So all is well over here, and I hope all is well with you too. Do me a favor and smash a Liz Ike on the video, and let's get into it. Let me begin by getting into my thoughts of Daredevil Born Again. Now, obviously, every Marvel show, when it comes out, it's a big deal, and we want to know, how is the show? How are fans responding to it? What's going on with Marvel? Part of this has to do with just the actual narrative of the studio itself. I mean, maybe there was a time where we were just celebrating Marvel, and we were just showing up for these projects, and we were just enjoying the characters and the story. But I do think at this point, every time something Marvel happens, we kind of like check and look around to see, you know, are they continuing on a negative trajectory? Are they turning it around? And I think with this show in particular, it was so important to see, how is this show? Because it's not only the continuation of a show that people loved under Netflix, but this was a show that had a massive creative overhaul. They did all this stuff to change it, to try to make it better. And at a time when it felt like Marvel was screwing up a lot and couldn't quite figure out what their overall story was for the canon of the universe, it felt like in a sea of making bad decisions, they made one really good decision, and that was change this show. And so, you know, sitting down with you guys last night, getting ready to play the thing, and even in the anticipation of the last couple of weeks, I was like, yo, how is this show? Is it going to live up to the hype? Will it live up to the hype of the old Netflix show? Will it live up to the hype of this creative overhaul? Will it meet the moment of the Marvel fandom, and will we all appreciate it? And I would have to say, like, here's my take on it. And again, we're not going to do spoilers here. I'm not going to get into spoilers, but I will sort of give you my take on it. I think there are certain things that this show is doing even better than the Netflix show. Okay, so there are certain things, mostly the action, that this show is doing that I actually prefer to the Netflix version. But here's the problem, and I think this is where I think a lot of people are going to get hung up on. The unfortunate truth is that there's a lot that the show is doing that does not compare to what Netflix did. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the answer is here for Marvel Studios exactly, but like, one thing I think is super clear. One thing is super clear. And to me, it's that all of the new characters suck. and I'm being hyperbolic. They don't all actually suck. But let me just tell you this. Every single new character, from Detective Cherry to Matt's new partner in law to Matt's new girlfriend to like literally every single new character sucks compared to the Netflix cast. I mean, brother, you're talking to a guy that loved the Netflix series. I just got done watching that thing. I've been rewatching season 1. I'm telling you, from Ben Urich to the dirty cops that get shot to the guy that Foggy's getting the cigars for his mom. I'm telling you, every single character that was in the old Netflix show, better chemistry, more interesting. So the problem is, and this maybe this isn't a big deal to you, maybe you don't care, but I think the reality of this show, and I think this is something that Marvel should really understand and learn, they do not have any of the sauce that the characters had in the original version of the show, and therefore one of the big decisions, and you know the one, again, I'm not going to go into spoilers right now, but the big spoiler, the one character that's no longer, you know what I'm saying? The reason I think this might come back to haunt Marvel, and I go into this a little bit more in the spoiler video, which will drop later. The reason this is such a big deal is because you've removed things and characters and chemistry that was peak, and you have replaced it with stuff that is not as good. So at some level, Marvel has to understand, and I think if they're just thinking about like how are the fans taking this or like what's the deal here, I think the reality is all of the new stuff is not as good. And all of the new characters and all their chemistry and all the things they're building, not as good. Like legitimately 7 out of 10 compared to like 10 out of 10. So it's just very, very hard for certain fans who really liked what Netflix had to, I think, appreciate what this show is offering. Okay? But here's the thing. I'll say sort of to cushion that and why I'm actually really optimistic about the show. I kind of believe that these 2 episodes that we just watched, I feel like this is the most we will see of that old version of the show. Now, let me be crystal clear about this. There's the Netflix version of the show. Then there's the original MCU version of the show. And the new MCU version of the show is the one with all the new characters, new law characters, new, like the black chick that's Matt's friend and co-worker at work, his new blonde, therapist girlfriend, the Detective Cherry, all of these new characters, they're all from the original MCU version of the Daredevil show. And what I'm personally hoping for is that what we just saw in episodes 1 and 2 is all that we will see of that bad version of the show that they literally changed, and that Dario Scartapan and maybe some of the other people have written material to kind of take some of that old stuff and make it work with the new stuff. And I'm really hoping that we're now going to get into, in episode 3, the actual new version of the Netflix Daredevil show. So that's kind of like my hope and my cope for the show. But here's the thing, man. Even if I say all of that, right? And even if I'm granting you all of those things about it, and I really do feel like the worst part is the cast and of characters and how it just doesn't hold a candle to the Netflix stuff. That's its biggest flaw. I would still have to say, I think it's a really good show. I think it's better than a lot of what Marvel has cooked in the past. And it's almost unfortunate for the show that the Netflix version even exists, right? Because if you didn't have that, I think this is far and away one of the best things Marvel's ever done. And I think it's very close to like Loki, and just it's very good in its own right. Again, I gave the first episode a 9 out of 10. I gave the second episode like a 7.5, maybe an 8 out of 10. The only problem is that first episode of Netflix is 10. That first episode of the Netflix show is so peak, bro. It is a 10 out of 10. So it's just really hard because this is a 9 out of 10. It is phenomenally paced, the first episode. The intro is insane. The outro with Fisk becoming mayor and the conversation he had with Matt, so good. Holy crap. What a great episode, in my opinion. it just has the problem of being the successor to a show that was legitimately better. That is a weird, tough spot for the show. And I thought episode 2 was kind of boring, if I'm going to be honest with you. Like, episode 2, I understand some of the things they're setting up. I understand they're trying to play the long game with some of these arcs and some of this development. But episode 2 was boring. And it doesn't really heat up until the very last part of episode 2. That action at the very end of episode 2, incredible. So brutal. Shocking. And in that sense, I think the show is actually even exceeding what the old Netflix version did. But man, I'm really hoping that like that's the beginning of a lot more action. Okay? So I would overall have to say that the thing I love about the show, I think its strongest attribute is it feels peak Daredevil. It feels like it's taking what the Netflix show did and just kind of upgrading it a little bit in the action department. Okay? I know some people were like, oh, the CGI is wonky, all this, that, second, and the third. No, you're wrong. You're dumb. It's great. There's some parts that don't perfectly look photorealistic, but as far as building the scene, building the aesthetic, having it actually feel like Daredevil swinging around and doing crazy action, it's great. So that I actually legitimately like better than the Netflix version. That's more like Daredevil. I made this point when we watched the old Ben Affleck movie. You know, there's some parts in that Ben Affleck movie where he's whipping around, flying around the city, and I'm like, dude, that's actually more like Daredevil than even the Netflix show. Like, I made this point back in the day, and I continue to believe that. So what they did with that first 15 minutes and that sequence and him flipping around and just all of that, it is legitimately better than the Netflix stuff. It is peak. It is perfect for me as a Daredevil fan. I want way more of that. The issue is that there's not enough of that. Like these first 2 episodes, you have like the 15-minute sequence, and then you've got like 2 minutes at the end of episode 2. Other than that, it's people in rooms talking. You know what I mean? And that can be okay, right? Like that can work. My problem with Penguin was Penguin did way too much of that. Not enough action and pacing and stuff like that. And so I would be disappointed if Daredevil didn't turn it up. I think they will turn it up. And again, my hope here is that these 2 episodes are the old show and a bridge. And I think what we're about to see is sort of the new version of the show. I could be completely wrong. And if it continues to be like this, that would be disappointing to me because the character stuff is just not working on the same level. And I really don't like the new cast of characters. I just don't. I'm not down. I don't care. I wish Bullseye would have taken literally every single one of y'all out instead of the person he did take out. Fuck y'all. You're not real to me. Get out of my face. But other than that, the show is really, really good, and I find myself enjoying it. I think it's a good time. So here's the question, right? That's like my thoughts on the episodes, and we'll get into more in the Q&A section. But with that being said, how are other fans responding to it? How is the wider community, the nerdy community, feeling about this show? Well, I don't know. I've seen some mixed reactions online. I've seen mixed reactions even within the community. And I got to say, I have to say, I have this feeling, and it's kind of been itching at me since yesterday, and I haven't been perfectly able to articulate this point. I'll try to do it right now. This should go brilliantly live in the moment without a clear, concise way of putting these words together. But I'll try to make this point for you. Last night, as we were getting ready for this, some of you guys asked me, where's my hype level at? I asked you guys the same thing. And, to my surprise, I really never got over an 8 out of 10 in hype last night. And I wonder, how did you guys feel? Were you building hype? I'm super curious. I'm kind of peeking over the chat. What was your hype level going into the episodes? Did you get to a 9 out of 10 as far as hype and anticipation? Because I think back to Loki and season 1 and watching that, and I think I had way more hype, and I think I had a way better reaction to the beginning of Loki. And this doesn't even as much have to do with the actual shows. It has to do more with Marvel. You know, coming out of Infinity War, and, you know, we had WandaVision, which I mostly thought was great. The finale, whatever. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, whatever. But at that point, we were still so high on Marvel coming out of Endgame that, you know, we were ready to be wowed. We were ready to see what the next big thing was and how crazy things were going to happen. And I just never got there last night. So I think part of this has to do with just where Marvel is currently at as a fan base, okay? But the other thing that stuck out to me about last night was, as exciting as it was, there's something about the timing of the Doomsday and Secret Wars leaks that I think really put a damper on this show for me personally. And I'm wondering, I want to try to articulate this point. And I think some of you might get mad that I'm trying to make this point. I think some of you might understand where I'm going with this. But the hype for Marvel and the curiosity and the interest, and I think where a lot of the energy actually is, like, I really don't know any other way to say it than I could just tell when something's electric. I could just tell when something is really activating people. And, you know, over the weekend, we had that insane leak and, you know, massive conversations around that, big videos. You know, I made a big video about it, made a breakdown of it that's doing quite well as well. And I could just tell, like, the energy was there. People were losing their minds. People were really curious. Everybody wants to know who's the prisoner that Doom has. Everybody's curious now about Spider-Man 4 and the Battle World aesthetic and all of that. And I kind of had this moment and I realized that's really where the energy is at and where people are excited. And Daredevil, it almost feels like it's a show or a project out of time. And I almost feel like there's, again, I'm probably not articulating this perfectly, but I almost feel like within this exact problem is actually all of Marvel's problems. Meaning, in a sense, the hype and anticipation part of the universe has completely overtaken the actual product to the point where the product itself is almost an afterthought. In some ways, Daredevil Born Again is an afterthought. I don't know that I'm making this make sense, but it's almost like I feel as though, yes, Daredevil is here. Okay, let's watch it. I expect to have a good time. I expect to enjoy myself as I'm watching it, but I don't expect to sit there and watch it and then want to talk about it and gush about it for hours and hours and hours. It's almost like I am just getting in line for the thing. Thank you for the thing. That was an enjoyable thing. And then when I go to try to engage in fandom itself, when I go to actually try to talk with the fans or create content, and I want to go to where the energy is at, it is not on the show. The show is an afterthought. Does any of this make sense? Is any of this coming across? And maybe one of you can articulate it a little bit better than me. But I almost feel like one of two things needs to happen. Either the production of these Marvel projects needs to happen way faster. So, like, we probably shouldn't be talking about leaks for a thing for several years. I think that's something that hurt Brave New World. I think it's something that might hurt Born Again. I mean, guys, we've been talking about over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. We were talking about these leaks, the set photos, the revamp of Daredevil. And at that time, that's where the energy was. The curiosity about the changes, the curiosity about certain characters coming back. That's when it was hot. That's when the energy was there. And I almost feel like, because look, one of two things needs to happen. Either you stop the leaks and you stop that so that then people can actually be on an appropriate cycle of information, hype, anticipation, and then the project. That's one way this could happen. The other way is you just make production so fast that on the heels of being excited about the thing arrives. And by the way, I actually don't think you can do the first one. I actually don't think you're going to be able to solve this problem leaks are too prevalent. It's way too big. You're not going to solve this problem that way. So the only way you can solve this problem is to make the production of your things happen about twice as quickly. Twice as quickly. And there are ways that could happen. And I actually think that Hollywood is going to go in this direction. And I think once production cycles shrink down to like 3 to 6 months for $200 million movies, and maybe they're not 200 million anymore, you know, big blockbuster shows and movies. I think once we get to that point, this problem might correct itself a little bit. So I don't know. I couldn't shake this feeling last night, and I couldn't shake this feeling just thinking about Marvel in general lately. And I was like, yo, what is the solution here? Because, like, dude, I'll be honest with you. I got a couple things to say about Daredevil. I don't really have too much more to add. I don't really have a lot more that I want to say. And I think one of the weird things is, like, Marvel gave out 9 episodes. Everybody's got all 9 of them. Well, there's not a big danger of leaks because there's actually not anything really crazy that happens in the show. And certain things that happen, we've known about for a long time. Does any of this make sense? Like, does anybody, and I know I can see people in chat, some people are saying, like, you know, brain rot, ADHD and all this stuff. It's all good, baby. I totally get it. Some people probably think that's crazy what I just said, but I bet it's not crazy to all of you. I bet it's not too wild for some of you. I bet for some of you, you actually 100% understand where I'm coming from. I think some of you get it. So we'll see. I mean, look, I'm a pundit, I'm a YouTuber, but I'm also a fan. I'm a big fan of these projects. I'm also a student of this shit in the sense that, in general, what the Marvel Cinematic Universe did was unbelievable, and it created all sorts of new ways of doing content, interacting with fans, etc., etc. But I'm really a student of how technology and information changes media. And I feel like Marvel's in a weird sort of part right now. And I mean, for me, I think specifically with Captain America Brave New World and specifically with Daredevil, what I'm trying to say is I think part of the lack of hype is the fact that the leak cycle and the cycle of information for these things went back years. And you just can't sustain hype for years when there's no new information. Does that make sense? So I don't know, man. I wanted to throw that out there. Maybe we'll talk more about it in the Q&A section of today's show. You know, where some of you guys will have some thoughts on that. It's almost like I can say Daredevil's acceptable. I accept this as a fan. I will continue to enjoy it week in and week out. But I don't really feel like it demands week by week coverage. I don't think it demands videos every week. I don't think it's where the interest or the hype of fans is currently at. That's just my opinion. I have not fully processed what all of this means. It's just my honest feeling, my honest instinctual take about what this is and what is happening. So I don't know, just kind of wanted to throw that out there. We can talk more about it. That sort of concludes my overall thoughts on Daredevil Born Again and Marvel. 9 out of 10 for episode 1, 8 out of 10 for episode 2. And also kind of a little bit like, yo, is media changing so fast that, like, fandom's already way different and we just haven't fully accepted it yet? What the hell's going on here? So, yeah, that's all my thoughts on that. Okay, let's get into this next topic here. Let's talk about where the actual hype and excitement is. Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, right? So let's get into this. You know, the other day, and I saw so many of you guys trying to bring this up. People were even bringing this up on Monday's show. People were bringing this up to me on Twitter. People were bringing this up to me on the Discord. And I think at some level, some of you guys just like to dangle bad news or potential bad news in front of me and watch me freak the fuck out. So thanks for that. And the story, what am I saying? What's the story? The story is Avengers Doomsday is going to be delayed. And a lot of you keep saying it. Where is this coming from? Do I believe it? And what the hell is actually going on with Doomsday? Let's get into it. So, this all originates from Jeff Snyder. We've talked about Jeff a couple of times on the show. Pretty good scooper, pretty good reporter. I subscribe to his newsletter. I think it's pretty good. This was during a conversation he was having with John Roca on the Hot Mic podcast. Another person I like his content, like the cut of his jib, as they say. And in this conversation, Jeff Snyder offhandedly said, I've heard Avengers Doomsday could get delayed because they don't even know who's in the movie. And he sort of said that offhandedly. It was off the cuff. It was something he heard. And I actually think, so here's what I'll say about this. A couple of different things. Number one, people need to learn the difference between an exclusive that Jeff publishes as a big report, meaning this is something that happens, and a rumor that he has heard about that he's going to bring up on the Hot Mic podcast, and a third level all the way further down of just some off-the-cuff shit that he says in a moment about something that he heard. So I believe that Jeff is accurately hearing that there's a scramble to find out who exactly is in Doomsday, because there's probably like a very ambitious thing they're trying to do. They probably want to shoot more than they have to, and then they want to refine it down for the actual movie. So there's probably like confusion. They're building the sets currently right now. It was already technically delayed. It was supposed to shoot sometime this month. I think it's going to shoot sometime next month. Could the movie be delayed a little bit even more? Sure. Do I think this movie is delayed into 2027? Absolutely not. 0% chance. I do not think that's possible. And I frankly think Marvel cannot afford, quite literally, cannot afford for that to happen. So this big report and Rob Liefeld sharing it out and saying, like, I've heard the same. It's like, what do you mean you've heard the same? The same as what? The same of the offhanded comment that Jeff said in a podcast? You've heard the exact same thing? Interesting. So, no, man, I don't believe all of these reports that Doomsday is going to be delayed. Now, obviously, if it gets delayed into 2026, that would be very bad. Okay, does anybody want that, by the way? Does anybody want this movie to be delayed into 2027? No. None of us want that. And I don't think it's going to happen. Could the movie be delayed slightly? Of course. Here's the by the way, you know what else pisses me off about this shit? I actually told you guys Doomsday and Secret Wars could be delayed like a fucking year ago. I've talked about how, here's how this works. Let me explain it to you like this way. Now I'm starting to get pissed off. Here's how this works. Marvel has a bunch of slots. Okay? They've got a February slot. So technically, if they went really hard on this movie, they could actually publish it or release it February before it's supposed to come out in May. Okay? They also have summer slots, like the slot that was supposed to go to Spider-Man 4. They also have winter slots. They also have a February slot of the following year. So what's going to happen? If the movie can't get off on a proper schedule in a timely manner, the date will shift from one of the slots to a different slot. Does any of this make sense? I've been telling you for a long time. I think these movies could be delayed. They, in my opinion, they will not be delayed out of their year. Meaning you will see Doomsday in 2026. You will see Secret Wars in 2027. That's what it is. I strongly believe that. Okay? And until some actual reporting comes out that suggests that it will be delayed a whole year, no. The answer is no. That shit is not going to happen. And frankly, like, I feel like they actually are very, very close. And a lot of the comments and stuff that the Russos are making recently kind of hints at that. So I just think if you really think it's going to be delayed a whole year, you're crazy. Could it happen? Yes. If it does happen, I'll be super pissed and I'll be like, damn, looks like friggin' Rob Liefeld was right. But for now, nah. You're asking me based on all the things I know, based on being plugged in? No, it's not going down. Now, speaking of Avengers Doomsday, a couple of interesting things coming out about Avengers Doomsday. And I kind of want to touch on something, and I want to watch a little bit of this video here where an interview was done with the Russos talking about Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom. So let me get this pulled up, and then we'll watch the video together. This is fascinating. It's really quite interesting. So we've got this comment here. The Russo brothers say Robert Downey Jr. tried to convince the Russo brothers to direct Avengers Doomsday a year before they signed on. Anthony Russo said, Robert is one of the most talented performers on the planet. For him to be motivated to explore a new character like Victor Von Doom, it doesn't get more exciting. And I 100% agree with that. But now, let's check this interview out here. Let's see what's the deal.
Steve McFeely came up with a really incredible idea.
How did you guys?
And also, I want to really break this down because look, I have my theories about this. I think I see what's happening, but I'm not always right about these things. All I can do is kind of take the new information, filter it through all the things that I have heard, and try to make sense of it. They keep talking about this story idea that Steve McFeely had, and it being an activating thing. The question is, when did that happen? I wonder if we'll get the answers in this interview.
React to him telling you.
Oh. Yeah.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
As a cool intro, I would cut it in half, make it about literally half as long, but it's cool.
Guys, it is always an honor. Thank you for taking the time.
Of course.
Our pleasure.
Thank
You know, I feel like a lot of the illustrations in the source material of Electric State are just these really beautiful reminders that a single image can just tell you so much in a story. I'm sort of curious, you guys have pulled a lot from different frames, whether it be Marvel Comics
Man,
or
I don't care about Electric State. I'm sorry, Russo brothers, but I do not care.
this source material. What's the most you've ever been impacted as a storyteller by a single frame that you were able to get the most out of?
You know, it's interesting.
Frame, that's a great one.
It's in the book. It's in the Electric State book, but it's actually not in the movie. We didn't end up putting it in the film, but it's the guy standing. It tells the story best of everything in the book, which is this, how technology creates alienation and addiction issues. And there's a guy standing in a parking lot at like a remote Narrowcaster station, and his head is just tilted towards the sky, and he's standing there all alone. And it really tells the story of, like, you know, how Simon perceives the you know, unhealthy relationship we have with technology.
But it's also like an arrested moment where it's just the image.
It's only 6 minutes. We'll go through the Electric State stuff. We'll get into the Doom stuff.
It's just like begging you to imagine what happened just before this, what happens just after this. And I think that was what was so exciting about Simon Stålenhag's work in the book, is just it suggested a vast story that was mysterious and unknown that he didn't completely deliver to you in that book. So it allowed us and allowed our creative partners, Chris Marcus and Steve McFeely, the writers on this movie, to just really swim in that world and find something.
Yo, are y'all going to watch this when it comes out on Netflix? I'll give it a shot. Are you guys going to watch it?
There's a generation of filmmakers right now who are growing up watching your work. What do you think is your single frame that is most influencing them?
I mean, maybe it's Tony Stark on his knees right before he snaps.
Yeah.
You know,
You know what's so funny is before Joe said that, that was the image that popped in
I would
my
say
head
so.
too.
Yeah, it's iconic.
Strangely.
You guys have given not just single, you guys have given some of the greatest moments
If I was there, I would follow up and be like, so isn't that crazy because you're turning him into Dr. Doom? Like, what's the deal with that?
of all time. If you allow me to geek out for a second, I'm a big believer that Alan Silvestri is one of God's gifts to cinema.
Yeah.
I think that the Back to the Future score is one of the probably top 5 greatest movie scores of all time.
Maybe number one.
Honestly, you can make a really solid case for number 1, which I think.
And by the way, you know that the score doesn't show up until 20 minutes into that movie.
Okay, so I want to talk about, because also I actually also need the instrumental version of Wonderwall.
Yeah.
I hope that's not a spoiler, but when there was a moment last night at the premiere, I went, and I go, is that Wonderwall? Like it's just beautiful. So when you have Alan Silvestri, but then you have an incredible collection of like kind of 90s needle drops that you can rely on, how do you decide whether or not a moment is appropriate for Alan or whether or not an appropriate version for appropriate moment for Wonderwall.
Well, I want to point out that Wonderwall is orchestrated by Alan Silvestri.
No!
Yeah, so there you go.
That's cool.
Something I never knew I always wanted.
That and Don't Stop Believing. They're both Alan.
Yeah.
So. But that was an idea we came up with early on, was to have Alan take over certain cues. Obviously, there's a character in the movie who, a taco who plays a piano. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it won't later.
Did you ever think you'd ever say that in an interview at any point in your career?
No.
But yes, it was important to bed the audience in the period of the movie. The period's really a key part of the film. The way that we're interpreting this fable is that, it happened at a time, the 90s were really the decade where we transitioned into the digital age. So it's interesting to play with this notion, were we more advanced at that time, what would have happened? And so the music, the needle drops really help us set the tone. But this idea that they integrate with the score was critically important because we have Alan Silvestri and because he's so brilliant.
This sounds like a weird comparison. It reminded me a lot of what Zemeckis did for Forrest Gump, where it was a lot of needle drops, but also there's a great Forrest Gump score and how they kind of blend together.
Well, it's interesting, because there maybe were similar needs between the two movies because they're both sort of a revisionist histories, right? So.
That's interesting.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? So Alan's music certainly provides the sort of heart and soul and energy of the movie, largely. But the needle drops, the period music that became important to this movie was because we were also trying to ground this fantasy story in a reality. We wanted it to feel tethered to some common history that we all shared. So that's why they were so useful, and perhaps the same way.
I love that. They're pulling out here really quick. I feel like one of the lessons we can pull out of this movie is this idea that if we're surrounded by the right people, by the people that love us, we can do anything in this world. You guys work together so well. I want you to take me to the moment where you looked at each other and went, let's call Robert Downey Jr. and ask him if he'll come back. How does that phone call go?
Interestingly enough, Downey decided to go back before we decided to go back.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had a dinner with Downey
And by the way, let's let him talk, but I have some theories about it.
a year before we agreed to do the movie, where he was trying to convince us why we should do the movie. We just didn't have a story to tell. We didn't have a way in yet. And then it hit us. Steve McFeely came up with a really incredible idea.
Okay, so that's kind of interesting. So that would imply, and you don't know for sure, right? You don't know for sure if they're being completely truthful here, but that would imply that back in the day when the Russos had their Secret Wars idea, they more had an idea of fun things to do, and they couldn't quite crack the story way to get there. And that's interesting. So this would imply that so Downey's talking about coming back. And Marvel has an idea. Now, let's think about this. A year before the Russos, if we take some of the reporting, that's probably early last year was probably when they officially signed to come back. Because that's right around when we started hearing that. So a year before that, they're talking to Robert about his return. That would be 2024, 2023. That would be the beginning of 2023. That's fascinating. So that is Quantum Mania time right? Unless I'm mistaken. So that's around Quantum Mania time. So let's think about this. So around Quantum Mania time, they're talking about RDJ coming back. This is before Jonathan Majors gets in trouble. Okay? So something we talked about on Monday, and, we don't know 100% sure how this all went down, but Jeff Snyder had that report that he had heard from his best source that the plan was to always do Doctor Doom. Okay? And so it's possible that the plan for Doom precedes even hiring Majors, and this has to do with bringing RDJ back and doing Doctor Doom. And this was happening before Majors even got in trouble. That is very interesting. Let's keep going.
How did you guys react to him telling you?
Yeah.
To Downey? Yeah, we were thrilled. I mean, look, Robert is just one of the most talented performers on the planet.
True.
And for him to be motivated to explore a new character like Victor Von Doom, it was it doesn't get more exciting. Yeah. So it's like,
Wow.
Guys, you're the reason I love movies.
Thank
and
you,
I love you
sir.
so much.
So that is kind of implying that even in that year, so in early 2023, this is kind of a head scratcher. So in early 2023, Downey is thinking about Doom. Downey's talking about Doom, and he's trying to get the Russos to come back. Wow. That is very, very interesting. So I guess we would have to wonder, when did McFeely have that activating idea? When did that all go down? It seems like it was probably recent. The timetable here is fascinating. Wouldn't that be 2022? It could be. Yeah, you could be right. It could be all the way back to 2022. Wait, was Quantum Mania 2022 or was that 2023? Wow. That's really interesting. I hope more comes out about this because I'm really fascinated as to how this all happened. I mean, my interpretation is that this Doom thing with Downey was probably on the table for a long, long time. And I have my own kind of beliefs and reasons as to why that was. And so then you have to wonder, like, what is that idea? What is that activating idea? Huh. Very, very interesting. February 2023. Yeah, well, either way, guys, that is fascinating. So I wanted to touch on the Doomsday delay. I do not believe it. It could be delayed a month or two. You know, I still think it's even possible Spider-Man 4 becomes a Christmas movie and Doomsday becomes the summer movie. I think that's actually perfectly possible. But I don't anticipate it being delayed out of 2026. And I don't expect Secret Wars to be delayed out of 2027. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. And it's always fascinating to hear these guys give us an update about the process and what's going on with RDJ. Fascinating, fascinating. Okay, one more big story here, and then we're going to get on into the Q&A portion of today's stream. I saw we had a massive super chat. I really appreciate that. We'll get into all the different questions that you guys have when we get into the Q&A section of this. Okay, so let's shift. Let's talk a little bit about the DCU. Obviously, Superman coming out. James Gunn, you know, within the past couple of weeks, just had this really weird press conference thing. You know, frankly, we didn't talk too much about the press conference, but it was weird. You know, my general take on it was, this is such a weird thing. They invited a bunch of press, a bunch of really friendly press, you know, out. Basically a bunch of shills for Gunn that are very gun friendly. And they all get out there and they do this big interview thing where basically Peter Safran and James Gunn admit that some of the projects they wanted to make are not happening. They talk about a bunch of new projects. They talk about a 6-year plan. They're asked about Pattinson. They say basically a non-answer. Like they said, I forget the exact way they said it, but they didn't say no. They didn't say yes. They said something like, we don't know, or like they're potentially, or maybe, or something, you know what I mean? So what a weird freaking press conference, to be completely honest. You come out of that and some people are excited. A lot of people like myself are like, what's the deal here? You want to do 5 projects a year and you want to do a 6-year plan. We haven't even seen Superman yet. And you're already canceling projects, but talking about more. It was just such a weird thing. Okay. Not even really sure to this day, what was the point? And I don't really know what is the narrative coming out of that. I can't really tell you that I look around and see a bunch of DC fans very excited after hearing all of that stuff, okay? And on top of that, there's this whole question about the Superman screenings. And, you know, let's get into this. You have a guy like Jeff Snyder who is saying that he has a really good source that continues to tell him that Superman is terrible, okay? And then you had... I believe John Campea came forward and said that he has talked to some people that said that it's really good. My Time to Shine has come forward to say she's talked to some people that say it's fine, not like great, but not bad. So what's the deal here, right? Well, I'll tell you the really boring but probably accurate version of this. You know, there's some people out there, and maybe you're one of these people in the chat. Some people out there are like, hey, Jeff Snyder has an axe to grind. He clearly hates James Gunn, and so he's lying. He doesn't have a source that tells him that the movie's bad. He's lying. He's coming out here and saying what he needs to say, what people cannot prove, and he's just taking shots at Gunn because he has a vendetta. Well, let me tell you, that's not true. That's not what's happening. And I absolutely believe that Jeff has a really reliable source that has seen Superman, or that has talked to people that have seen Superman, and has concluded that it's terrible. You know, we talk about movies and shows all the time. It's never universal. It's not like everybody thinks this is really good. Everybody has different opinions. Even one of the best movies of all time, you will find somebody that doesn't like it. Okay? So Jeff Snyder is not lying. He has a person who has seen the movie that thinks it's really bad. How is that so hard to believe? How is it also hard to believe that John Campea has some people that have seen it that really like it? Is this really so hard to believe, man? And so I have seen, because frankly, some of you guys are like real buttholes about this, and you need me to know about it. And so many people brought up the Campea thing to me, and they keep like tagging me in it, or, you know, hitting me up and being like, well, what do you think about this? Snyder's clearly lying. Campea says the movie's peak. You know, who are you going to pick? Who's right? Guys, they're both right. And the other thing is, like, you're talking to a person that generally did not like the trailer, does not like the look of the movie, and really isn't into James Gunn's style. So you think it's hard for me to imagine people not liking the movie? Bro, I've only seen a couple of minutes of it. I don't even like it. You know what I mean? Like, legitimately, I don't like what I've seen. So I think what's happening with Superman, frankly, I mean, here's what I think is happening on multiple levels. I think James Gunn is in way over his fucking head. I think he's been working nonstop, busting his ass. And guess what? Warner Brothers is still Warner Brothers. In fact, with a guy like David Zaslav, they might be more Warner Brother-y than ever. I don't know what's going on with DeLuca and Abdi, but apparently there's all kinds of shit between them and Zaslav. Joker 2 was big blow up in their face. They might be preventing the Batman stuff from happening. There's all these rumors out there. Basically, it's a fucking shit show, like it always is with Warner Brothers. Okay? I actually think Gunn is working incredibly hard and doing everything he can. He's not even getting paid what Jon Favreau is getting paid to make fucking Mando and Grogu a movie. Okay, so I think the man is overworked, underpaid, and he's doing the best that he can. And I think he's frankly coming up short. Not necessarily all because of him, but I think he's coming up short. I think there are problems with Superman. I think they could fix them. They've brought in this Disney ex-employee person to try to help market the movie. And I think that's a sign that they're very nervous about it. And they're probably very nervous about it because they've seen it, and there are people that are worried, man. How is this such a crazy idea? How is this so crazy? Of course that's what's happening. Read the tea leaves. They had a screening. They canceled a CCXP appearance. They delayed the trailer. I mean, come on, man. If you really think this is all going off without a hitch and the movie's brilliant and everybody knows it, you're living in a delusional reality. That's not what's happening. There are issues, there are problems, and there's a lot of reasons to be concerned. Drama, drama, drama. So that's the one thing with regards to the Superman thing, the status of DC Studios. Now let's talk about Batman, because guess what? It gets way fucking worse. It actually gets way worse. By the way, DC and Gunn should be so grateful that Marvel has dominated the news cycle over the past couple of weeks, because I think if there weren't a lot of things going on, more people would realize what a shit show it is over at DC. Let's talk about Batman. For the past year, we have wondered, what is the deal with Batman? Is Pattinson going to be the DCU Batman? When they did this secret little press thing and they brought all of the shills over to Warner Brothers, they were asked about this and they couldn't give a definitive answer. How crazy is this? I saw a video from Grace Randolph the very next day where she breaks it down in great detail, because she basically said, he didn't say no. Here's all the reasons this should happen. Ironically, I don't even like the Batman, but I acknowledge that the best case scenario for DC is to have Pattinson be the Batman. Because every single thing other than that is about to be really bad. Okay? Peter Safran and James Gunn actually spoke to Penguin season 2 potentially having issues. So let's just talk about what's going on. Batman is having issues. It's delayed. They can't crack the script. Penguin, delayed. They can't crack the script. And also there's potentially some drama behind the scenes because if Matt will not join with Gunn, then can we really, like, do you really think James Gunn is going to continue to make all of the Matt Reeves Batman stuff and then set up his Batman? There's no way. There's no way. And I think this is what we're starting to see sort of fall out. And most recently, the most recent addition of this, and I'll pull this up for you because it's fascinating. The most recent addition of this has to do with Robert Pattinson himself. Check this out. He's asked about shooting the Batman 2. And he literally says, I fucking hope so. I started out as young Batman, and I'm going to be fucking old Batman by the sequel. And I think there was a humorous tone here when he said it, but at the same time, this is not something you ever want to see written down. This should not be printed. This is insane, and this is definitely something that a lot of fans are talking about today. Okay? Ridiculous, dude. This thing, it happened yesterday. This thing has over 300,000 likes, 6 million views on Discussing Films tweet here. That's insane. So I guess we might be looking at a scenario where Gunn is going to quietly kill all of the Matt Reeves stuff and then potentially set up his own Batman. And, man, leave it to James Gunn to make a bad situation worse. Because there might have been a time when this could have worked. But I think he's lost so much goodwill, and there's just so much weirdness surrounding DC and what the actual plan is, that I think people are going to actually be very harsh. And frankly, my prediction is that if it's not Pattinson joining, fans are going to freak out. Because, number one, if he kills all the Matt Reeves stuff, people are going to be pissed. From a business perspective, I totally get it. I do not think you can have a Pattinson and a successful Penguin, Gotham. I don't think you can have that and do a DCU Batman. I think that is such a stupid idea to try to create literally both and then just tell people like, oh, this is just Elseworld or whatever. So I think that's a terrible scenario. If they do that, that's going to suck. It's going to be really bad for James Gunn because, frankly, people like Matt Reeves shit better. That's bad. Gunn cannot afford for that to happen, okay? So that's like the worst case scenario. But then, if you remove it at this point, there's been so much hoopla that we know what time it is, James. And even though, according to everything we've heard, the delay in the Batman 2 has nothing to do with James Gunn right now. It's another really important piece of this. According to the reports, and a lot of this has to do with what Jeff Snyder is saying, the delay in Batman 2 has nothing to do with Gunn. He is not doing anything to stop that. But it won't matter. People will perceive it as he did do that. If Pattinson ends, if there's no Batman 2, if there's no Penguin 2, people will absolutely blame Gunn. I know for sure it's not all his fault, and I will blame him because I don't like him. So you're catching me in a rare moment of telling you the truth here before I start to mercilessly shit on him and blame him for everything, even though it's not his fault. I promise you that is what will happen. People will blame him just like they blamed him for Superman and Lois ending, just like they blame him for certain animated projects going away, just like they're blaming him for a lack of video games. He will get blamed for it, and it will hang over him and the new Batman that he creates. So at this point, man, I kind of feel like they've backed themselves into a corner, and they have one good option, and the one good option Matt Reeves doesn't want to do. This is fascinating. we're going to see how this all goes. I mean, 5 projects a year. I don't know. I kind of think James Gunn might be checking me out at Target in a couple of years with the way that this is currently going. We will find out, and we're going to find out together the most latest updates about the DCU. Shit's not going good. They had this real weird, shilly press conference, bring out the journalists to talk in a quiet room. Even that didn't really go well. Conflicting reports about Superman and its screenings. They're bringing on this Disney guy. Battinson's out here on the red carpet, literally dropping multiple F-bombs, talking about how he hopes he can still be Batman. It's not a good look. The sky is falling. So there you have it. Your updates about the DCU, James Gunn, Batman, Superman, all the rest. We'll see if they can get it together. I do not know. I do not know. Okay. So let's get into the questions and answer portion of today's show. We just went over a bunch of topics. Very interested in what you think about all these different stories. Obviously gave my take on Daredevil Born Again, non-spoilery. Talked a bit about the Doomsday and Secret Wars movies, comments from the Russo brothers, the delay story there. I don't really buy it. And we talked about the DCU. What a wonderful thing that Gunn has been building, and it's clearly going very well. So you probably have some thoughts, comments, concerns about all of that. And I will say also to the people listening on the podcast, we had a pretty good stream so far today. Good show. Lots of fun conversation, going through the topics in an orderly way. Really fun. Definitely didn't have any problems today. But we're about to do the Q&A, where I will open myself up to the craziness that is the live chat here on YouTube and on Twitch. And so I just want to give you a warning. It might get crazy now. Depending on what they say to me, I might freak out, crash out, and start dropping a bunch of F-bombs. So I just want to put that warning out there. And with that being said, let's now get in to the Q&A portion of today's show. Joshua Kimball, Bluegrass, first in today, says, "Damn it, Josh, you almost made me crash." Wait, what? I don't know about all that, brother. Hope you're okay. I don't want you to crash. Kyber, because of the stream going down? Yeah, that sucked. Also, too, I'm probably going to go back to StreamYard, and part of the reason why is so that I can pull up the actual super chats here. I noticed this portion of the stream can get a little boring because I can see the chats here. I'm going through all of it, but there's no cool way to pull it up for you guys to see. But on StreamYard, you can just pull up the different super chats. So I'm going to be doing that. On Monday, we're doing that. So I'm going to get that set up over the weekend. We'll be back to that. And hopefully we won't have any delays and shit like that because Streamlabs sucks. Kyber Stith says, "Den of lags." Yeah, no, I don't like those lags, bruh. Michael Phantom says, "I'm mixed on Daredevil. In my opinion, season 1 is pretty good opening and setup. And as a season 4, it doesn't really hit as good. 8 out of 10, though, still hype." Yeah, I think that's cool. I think that's appropriate. It's kind of about where I'm at with it. I've sort of expressed my opinions. I got some mixed thoughts, but yeah. CY98 says, "Why do you think they didn't just reshoot the entire show instead of making 3 new episodes?" Well, because they probably wanted to keep some of the stuff. Maybe they thought some of it was good, and maybe they just thought they could tighten it up in a way where a lot of those beats and characters would still be acceptable, and they just added a bunch of crazy action. So it's probably something like that. Rossi, thank you for the rose. Joshua says, "According to some people that have seen all 9 episodes, apparently the new characters grow on you. I guess we'll have to see, but I agree with you." Yeah, that's fair. And I hope they do. I hope they grow on us a little bit. But what I said still stands. And maybe it's just the byproduct of having that other cast and always being compared to it. But it would be like doing a spin-off to Cheers, and it's all these new Disney people at the bar. You know what I mean? It's not going to hit the same. Maybe if there wasn't an original Cheers, it would be fine. CY9 says, "Didn't they say they're keeping the original footage and only the new stuff is the pilot and the finale?" I have not heard that exactly. I've actually heard a couple of mixed things on what they use, what they're not using. Dave does that. Thanks for the sticker, brother. Appreciate you. Zach says, was it inevitable that I wouldn't be as good, or rather, it says it was inevitable that it wouldn't be as good as the Netflix shows, but it doesn't bother me. I think it's the best thing Marvel has put on Disney Plus. Nice, man. Yeah. No, I think it's really good. You know, I don't want people to get it twisted. I like the show. I think it's good, but I also have to be kind of honest in my critique, and it comes up short a little bit, and I think that comparison was always going to be there. Matt Spiro says, I'm way behind. So maybe you talked about it, but are you enjoying Invincible still? I am enjoying Invincible, but I'm an episode behind. I'll probably watch both episodes because it'll come out like tonight/tomorrow. I'll probably watch both episodes tomorrow night, but I'm going to bring this up every single time somebody asks me about Invincible. That animation is terrible. And they need to fix that animation. Like, there's no excuse for it. I know there's a bunch of people that are like, yeah, but the story's so good. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. This animation is tough. So I really think they need better animators. They should change studios. Justice Clemente with a, what is this, like a $80 hauler or something like that? That's very generous, man. Thank you. Says, Josh, do you reckon it's less on the impact of the content and more if it moves the needle for you? For example, Daredevil Born Again is awesome and hype, but it doesn't impact the grand scale of the MCU, and that's why you're struggling to sustain hype. Let me try to read this again. Daredevil Born Again doesn't impact the grand scale of the MCU, and that's why you're struggling to sustain hype. I mean, I guess a little bit. You know, I was thinking a lot about this. Let me say it to you this way, and maybe this will help, you know, bring the image a little bit more clear. So, ironically, the original Netflix show actually connects better to the MCU timeline than Born Again does to the current MCU. What I mean is, I can clearly place the events of Daredevil Season 1 because of some of the Easter eggs of like the Battle of New York and all this sort of stuff. It's partially because things were just moving more slowly back then and there was less content. But like, even Daredevil, when it first came out, felt like it was more connected to the MCU. You know, we're watching Born Again last night and we're like, well, what's the deal with like the Red Hulk? Like, nobody's talking about Red Hulk. Nobody's talking about Tiamat Island. And by the way, nobody talked about Tiamat Island until the Red Hulk did, right? So it feels a little less organic, and I think maybe the scope of that has gotten out of control, and it's hard to like place that stuff together. I think, so it's a couple of different things, man, because like, look, here's like another thing that I'll say about this. You know, Grace Randolph has suggested over the past couple of weeks that she thinks Deadpool is not as hyped and there's not as much interest about it. And one of the reasons she said this was because of the trailer breakdown. And I think she was saying that because her trailer breakdown did not blow up the way that other trailers had, that there was a lack of interest for the show. And I don't know that that's exactly what's going on, because there's clearly a lot of people that are going to watch the show. I think the show's going to do good numbers, but the trailer did not really move the needle for YouTube channels. And maybe to you as a fan, you're like, well, that doesn't mean anything. And it might indicate that there's a fatigue of engaging in the content beyond the content, like YouTube content. Like, maybe it's more the case that people just don't want to watch Grace break the trailer down. Do you know what I mean? Like, there could still be a ton of interest in the actual thing, but there's a lack of interest in wanting to watch Grace break the trailer down. That's possible. However, I have to be honest, I think it's deeper than that. And I actually believe that fandom itself and where the fandom's attention is at and what gets the fandom excited has changed a lot since Endgame. And a lot of that has to do with leaks and scoops. So I can see your point. And I think for a lot of fans, like just you as a regular fan, your experience is like individual and anecdotal. right? So like you as a fan, you might just be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I love this show. I'm very excited for it. I thought it was great. I saw a bunch of people high on it. This feels right. But like if the actual numbers don't support that, then we have to talk more about the overall data. So what if this show does less views than Ahsoka season 1? What if it doesn't chart as much? Like, you know what I mean? We don't have these answers, but I think there is something different happening within the Marvel fandom, and especially in the wake of those leaks. I was reminded what it feels like and what I can see when the fans are actually excited. So from my perspective, I have like a clear data point of like, what is it when it gets back to that 2019 feeling? And then why is that feeling not present for movies like Brave New World and for shows potentially like Born Again? And my potential answer, and just something that I think is interesting, is that I think it's that the interest of the fan base, the actual hype, like the thing they actually care about, is so past this show. So I hope I've explained it a little bit more, but that's generally where I'm at with it. Verse says, yo, Josh, the problem you're describing sounds similar to the speculation era in comics, leading to a huge financial bust. I don't think so, buddy. I understand maybe what you're saying there. I totally disagree. Those are totally different things. Kalen J says, Jeff said he thinks they're waiting for Mickey 17 box office to see if Pattinson will be the DCU Batman. Yeah, I've heard him say this. And I think what he's saying is Gunn is waiting, and then he's going to be like, look, this movie bombed. That guy shouldn't be Batman. But that's crazy because Batman, the movie, made like 760 or something, way more than most of the other DC projects. Penguin is winning awards and people love it. I mean, I think it's crap, but a lot of people love it. So, like, you're really, like, Gunn, are you really going to be like, Mickey 17 didn't do well, so this guy can't be Batman? What about, like, the actual Batman projects that are successful? What about all the fans that actually really like Robert Pattinson and want more? You know? But I guess we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Kalen J follows up and says, I think Gunn and Reeves are definitely butting heads, and I say get rid of Elseworld. It will confuse the audience. Yeah, I agree. That's probably why they're butting heads so much. And you can understand both sides of it, though. Like, if you're Matt Reeves, like, why do you care? Like, sorry, James fucking Gunn. You know what I mean? Like, if I was Matt Reeves, I would literally be like, bro, I'm literally a better filmmaker than you. I'm better than you. And I got here first, and I made something that is proven to be successful in the box office. So if I'm Matt Reeves, like, dude, I totally get it. Why would you kowtow to Gunn? What reason would you possibly have to do that? There is no reason. Now, from Gunn's perspective, I totally understand it as well. He's coming in, he's looking at the issues, he's looking at the success of this thing, and he's like, dude, you know, we could be really successful together. And I think Gunn, I mean, I'll give him credit for at least understanding that that's probably the best move. He's your boss. He's not his boss. This movie and Matt Reeves' contract was signed under DC before Gunn got there, before there even was a DC studio. He is a, what are their names? DeLuca and Abdi. Matt Reeves, James Gunn is not his boss. Like, don't you, like, does that not make sense? So Matt signed a contract before Gunn was even looked at for that job. Does that make sense? No? Let's see here. Justice Clemente, thanks for becoming a member. Really appreciate it. But Duncan says, headed off to the ice in Maine to ice fish for 5 days? So we'll miss the lounge, but I expect everyone to drink and blink for me in spirit. Oh, hell yeah, brother. We'll get into it. Appreciate you, man. Rossi says, Cool Bear is the muse of the tower. What the hell? What the hell? Joshua Kemmel Bluegrass says, if my sausage hurts, did I overcook it or is it not cooked enough? What? I don't know what the hell I don't know what any of this means. You guys are going crazy today. And then Riley says, Daredevil was good. Got to meet my second favorite YouTuber yesterday, and I have a Reason one-on-one convo. It was awesome. Hopefully you're next, Josh. Nerd Avengers for life. Much love. Ooh, that sounds real cool. Hell yeah. Good for you. That's awesome. Let's see here. Alfredo, that's an interesting name, says, I've never understood why it's so damn difficult for DC to make good cinematic universe. Hell, even just good movies outside of Batman. I've always thought those characters were cooler. Yeah, they're really cool. And it's crazy. If you're a big DC fan, you've read incredible comic stories, you understand the juice. It is pretty wild that they have all that potential and they haven't been able to get it to work. I think the problem is Warner Brothers. I think Warner Brothers has sucked for a long time, man. I think they have bad culture. I think they have bad management. Yeah, and I don't think Zaslav made it better. I don't think they made it better. Joshua Kimball Bluegrass says, LMFAO. Hey, you don't say that. Hey, you don't say that, man. All right, guys. Any other questions, comments? What else is on your mind, man? I'll kick it for like 5-10 more minutes, and I'm going to get on out of here. A little bit of a shorter stream today. Yeah, man. Optimus Prime Rib, thanks for the 5 spot, says, off topic, but should Infamous Iron Man go in my Doom collection or my Iron Man Funko collection? Ooh, that's a very interesting question. I would say Doom. I'd say put it in the Doom. Yeah, put it in the Doom. Diaz says the animation side of DC able to create a universe, progress it, and end it before the cinematic side. That's true, but they had Bruce Timm. Hey, Badunga Dunga, thanks for the gifted membership, man. Appreciate it. Bruce Timm, brilliant animator, really interesting guy, great storyteller, and he helped all the animated stuff go off without a hitch. Check out Joe Russo's new comments about RDJ Dr. Doom. Well, we watched an interview earlier, and we went over those comments. Is there even newer comments? Oh, my God. Listen to this. This is crazy. Joe Russo says Robert Downey Jr. is doing detailed research to prepare to play Dr. Doom. He's writing backstory, costume ideas. He just loves really rich, three-dimensional characters, and I think he sees a real opportunity here with this character. Let's go. I knew the GOAT was putting in that work, man. My GOAT